So then my first question is going to be, are you a trumpet player?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, well,
I'm not playing now, but
mhm,
my my intention back in the beginning, before I took a turn into what I'm doing now, was performance and playing, and I did play. I've got a degree, trumpet performance degree, and from USC, and did the young freelance trumpet player bit
mhm,
around Los Angeles, and
mhm,
met a lot of people, played with a lot of people that I work with now on the other side.
yeah,
Uh, Wayne Bergeron being one,
yeah,
and others. So.
yeah. Well, and that was something I had just brought up towards the end of Wayne's interview is the number of people that you've, uh, I wouldn't say worked for, but worked with
Mhm.
or alongside of is remarkable. And, it's one reason that they're successful is, of course, who they are.
Mhm.
But, but to have a quality instrument in their hands and then people they trust,
Mhm.
like I was saying to Wayne, when they need help, either improving or fixing something, that's nice. So, yeah, the Yamaha trumpets. So the story I was wrapping up, I don't know if you heard part of it was, well, you did, how I played one of the Chicago B
Mhm.
flats and
Mhm.
it was like, now I got to buy this. What I remember was the first experience I had with Yamaha was a flugelhorn that my parents bought me back in 1980. And I sold that thing not very long after that. And I regret that to this day because I
Uh-huh.
think it was a great horn. And I don't know whatever possessed me to get rid of it, but I wish I had held on to that instrument.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um, so we're here to know about you, not about me. So enough. What do you think about me? It's like when a worst
I think you're
date.
doing a fine. I think
Yeah.
these interviews you're doing have been wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
On the aspect of getting to know people beyond the name
Yeah.
is it's really great. It's been great for me to watch some of those too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Um, and Wayne's like, I can't believe you. I see all these names, but I'll say the same thing to you. I put you in that same category. I mean, you guys are legendary in the well, more than just the trumpet world, but that's what I know. And it's like, so I want to know what makes you guys tick. I want to
Okay.
know. And it's nice to, trumpet player with a trumpet degree. So you would have known Ronnie Rom.
Oh, sure. Well, Ronnie was gone by the time
Okay.
but from there, I mentioned meeting Wayne, and I actually met Wayne while playing at Disneyland, and as I met a number of other players.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Disney has been kind of a portal through which a lot of really wonderful players,
Yeah.
and including John Hagstrom, who played in the All-American College Band, and it's he was out playing at Disneyland in the summer, and that's when we first met, when he was going to
Mm-hmm.
college at Eastman, and that's when our relationship started.
Yeah, it's really funny to see those videos pop up on YouTube with them in their Disney or
Uh,
Epcot uniforms, right? And to see them when they were
well,
kids. Yeah.
yeah, well, this was in 1980. Well, I think my first year playing out there, and it was a seasonal thing in the beginning, was 1978, Christmas of 1978 or something.
Mm-hmm.
79, and then 1980 was the 25th anniversary of Disneyland, and they decided to use the Fanfare Trumpeters, which is the group that I played in, all year long. But and that's where I met a lot of the really wonderful working
Mm-hmm.
musicians. In fact, Andy Martin, who is world-class jazz player, he's A-lister in the studios. I first met him my first year playing in the Disney Fanfare Trumpet Unit. He and his brother Stan, who is a trumpet player, both played trumpet in that group. I had no idea to play trombone until later, but
Mm-hmm.
that was a great experience for sure.
How many years did you do that?
I played out in Disneyland from, like I said, probably Christmas of season of 1978 through 1987, and that's when I made the choice to stop pursuing a playing career and devote all of my time into my business.
What was the business?
Bob Malone's Brass Technology, and that's I started kind of my path the Cliff Notes version was I needed some extra money. I needed a part-time job to help supplement my my young trumpet player freelancer playing income. And one of my roommates worked for a very highly regarded brass technician designer, Larry Minnick, who had a shop in West Los Angeles. And I don't know why Larry hired me. My roommate Wayne must have made some kind of a deal with him, but he did. And so, between Tom and Larry, kind of those paths all coming together, that created a career. So as my skills got better on the brass technician side, and I was still actively pursuing a playing career, I started experimenting with my own trumpets to try to improve them, and that's when I got into lead pipe design. And then Tom Stevens and I were still very close, and he would play what I did and like them, and he started playing them, telling other people about them, and so an unplanned career hit me in the face, and it grew to the point where I really did need to decide, what are you going to do?
Right.
I had a big pull, both emotionally at that point, and just the demands on what I was making were great enough to upright. I couldn't do both anymore.
So, I mean, the repair started before you built the business or opened the business. How did you get into that?
Well, it was, like I said, it was starting with Larry and at point zero. And it was really kind of an old school apprenticeship, with him. And he was a very old school guy. He was completely hands-on. There were, he was all about the crafts of everything, from whether it's taking dents out to, to assembling things. One of my first jobs when I got there, he taught me how to use a milling machine. And I finished making all of the parts and assembling the drawbench that we used to initially to make trombone slide tubes with, and then teach me how to and how to solder and and things like that. And it was as my skills got better, and he was less afraid of giving me things where either I wouldn't hurt myself.
Yeah.
I went that way, but the part that really drove me was the creative part and the design aspect of it.
How did you come to that, though? I mean, was it the sort of thing where you're looking at these instruments coming across your repair bench and thinking, I could make this better? Or was it a trial and error? Obviously, most things are trial and error, right? That's how we get.
Well, you start from a point, wherever you're at is where you start from. In my case, as I said, I was still actively playing, and I was really focused on C trumpets. And C trumpets at that time, we look at where we're at now, it's a completely different world. But back at the time, a standard C trumpet, a big modification to a box C trumpet was putting a B flat tuning slide on it. And then, the Schilke Bach conversions that at the time, those were big. So it was really trying to make my own C trumpet work better. And, as playing those instruments, you really had to work hard to get around all of the shortcomings,
Right.
From the intonation problems were obvious, but color shifts and all of the things that kind of came with the instruments of the day. And it was, I just wanted to make it easier for me, to be honest. And kind of looking at the design as it was and trying to figure out where are the weak points, come up with a theory as to why this thing was happening, and then experimenting to see if that was the case. And and if it was, what could you do to improve it? And that's why in the beginning I focused on lead pipes.
But it still seems like that's the mentality, right? What can we continue to improve, right? That's
Yeah, well, and you think about, I mean, the opportunity that I had at the time in terms of design was, it was a big open door because there were a lot of shortcomings. And I think over time, every manufacturer has kind of upped their game. But the instruments right now, people don't take it, you take for granted that an instrument plays in tune with itself now. Back in the day, that just wasn't the case.
it was not the case.
Yeah. So, so it's, as we've gone along, if somebody was young like I was trying to get into it now, the opportunity, the shortcomings are much less and far fewer than they were at the time that I started. As we've gone along with trumpet development, as I think Wayne said in his conversation with you, talking about how the development never truly stops.
Right.
In the case of Yamaha, you can really point to it that development of the trumpets that we have now started back, especially say mid 1980s, early mid 1980s, when Yamaha, Kenzo Kawasaki, and Hiro Okabe decided to break away from the Schilke influence, because Reynold Schilke was a big trusted advisor for Yamaha, and if you at the trumpets at the time, they were very similar, between Schilkes and the Yamahas. But going with a heavy wall trumpet, is what it was called, was a pretty big departure. And so the work that they started, really it's been sort of passing the baton from generation to generation of designers. And, I've been honored to be a part of a big chunk of that, especially in the end. But it's that whole philosophy of Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. And that's I think why we've landed where we didn't just all of a sudden decide, okay, we need to do this. It's just, it's been an evolution of work that was done before.
Well, that's why there's a first generation, then there's a second generation, right? And there will probably be a third, and that's exactly it. And I think I know that's how you survive in the business. If you stay the same, you're done. If you don't continually try to improve, and even the smallest thing, right?
Sure. That's what it is. Yeah. I think it's continuing to learn and build on that knowledge base. And I think if you get to a point where you think you've figured it out, you're probably done.
Yeah.
But it is the kind of thing that you walk through a door, and then all of a sudden you see things you become aware of things that you didn't know, and you realize that you still don't know a lot. And I think Wayne would say the same thing, and maybe he did. But as we've gotten into this, the more you get into it and the deeper we go and the more knowledge we're getting, the more that you don't know, and how complicated an acoustic system is, these brass instruments and trumpets, trumpets. But I think the improvements in the future are really going to be tied into, understanding relationships that people probably haven't thought of within the trumpet, and how different things work together.
So, what I know about Wayne is I've been to the Atelier in New York a couple of times. He's, been the magician on my trumpets. You're more on the design end of things, the front end of things. Is that right?
Well, my role at Yamaha now is overseeing all of the art. I oversee all the ateliers, and in fact now I oversee drum development too. So I'm not going to be designing drums, so no worries. We have an incredibly talented drum designer, but my background started in repair. My love was design, and that's how my business really grew. And all the Malone Bach conversions, the Malone Yamaha conversions, the lead pipes, the, different things. I mean, you can kind of clearly see that's where my heart was at. And on the Yamaha side, design the atelier's function as an R&D kind of boots on the ground for Yamaha. And so, that's design is really what I'm involved in, not so much repair anymore. But working with our artists and with players, the same kind of experience that you had when you walked into New York and, working with Wayne to adjust your trumpet and make it better. Those are all things that I've done, and it grew out of, my business even before I joined Yamaha. The idea of adjusting edges is something that I came up with quite a long time ago to try to figure out how could you shift resistance and make a horn feel more open or less open non-destructively. And so, sort of the tapping of the lead pipe venturi and I taught Bobby Shue that. And so, Bobby has adjusted, probably more trumpets, more Z trumpets than a few others than both Wayne and I combined. But, and that's a good example of how starting with a small, knowledge and then expanding it. And Wayne has really kind of taken that, he's incredibly curious, as you probably know, and, continuing to experiment. And so between the two of us, bouncing ideas off of each other and sharing knowledge, and adding into our colleagues in Europe and Japan who are kind of doing the same thing, it's just enabled an idea to go from something small to much more, much broader and deeper, and allowed us to help people in a greater way than we did when we first started.
You look back at the first adaptations or your first Malone pipe, and would you look at that now and think, what was I thinking? Has the evolution of that been so great, or is that really like that first light bulb that worked and now you've just improved it?
Well, I think, the idea, firstly, the way I did it, was I took every lead pipe taper I could get my hands on and I analyzed the heck out of it. So I carefully measured so that I could plot what the tapers were like. I started working with them. Before I made my own pipes, I modified Bach and Kahn pipes. So there are probably still some out there, but my first pipe that I did with that oversleeve, because what I had decided would be a way to improve intonation was to, kind of make a better transition into the bore of the instrument. With C trumpets, traditional C trumpet design, the lead pipe taper is actually pretty short, and there's a gap in bore size between the end of the pipe, and the actual bore itself. And that gap, has shown to cause, certain kinds of intonation. So then the question became, how do you design essentially a reverse lead pipe that does solve that problem and not create another problem with brace placement? Because if you start to move braces around on the bell, and especially if you move it back on the bell, then you create instability and you're dealing with, not very optimal places. And it creates all kinds of other issues. So my solution was creating that oversleeve where I could keep the flange on the bell in the optimal place and still have a reverse lead pipe essentially. So that oversleeve was kind of maybe my first kind of big innovation. And then the next step for me was, after getting as much as I could out of those lead pipe tapers, I had kind of in my mind formulated an idea for what a taper would look like to make it even better. And so I made a mandrel, and this was, working with Larry, learning how to do things like that. So I did it the old school way. I plotted out the taper, and I took a tool steel and I machined it, in steps of a quarter of an inch, carefully measuring, and it was a stair step thing, and then blending it all together to create the mandrel, and that ended up being my number one taper.
Wow.
And then the number two came later after a number of people played the pipes, and there were a lot of people who loved them. But there were some that felt they needed something different. And so I had another idea of how I could create a pipe that would satisfy those people, and did the same thing. And that was my number two taper. And then I used those two basic tapers to create pipes for B flat, C, D flat, E, trumpet. And that's when I did the curved pipe for the D flat conversion and that whole thing. And those are the pipes that Yamaha has incorporated into the artist model trumpets. So, so they're still out there and being used. And
so now I'm curious, the designs that you made, were those considered, would you consider those proprietary? Did you own a patent or?
Well, so I, again, kind of through Larry's influence, Larry always thought that the best protection you could have is not tell people what you're doing, because you can, if recreating a Mount Vernon or a New York Bach trumpet was easy, all you do is take it to somebody to measure it out and then just duplicate it. Or the same thing goes with a Stradivarius violin. Clearly, there's more that goes into making a trumpet play a certain way than just, the dimensions and the specifications. So I kind of went the route that Larry did, which was there are things that I would do when making the lead pipes that were not obvious, processes and so on, that even if somebody were to duplicate what the dimensions of the pipe were, they'd never be able to get the same kind of sound and performance out of it. That being said, the ironic thing is I do have patents. I have patents on clarinet parts, though. I had a conversation over lunch with one of my friends who I invited to share shop space in my shop, Ruben Allen. And Ruben is pretty well known and respected in the LA area as a woodwind technician. And I thought, I could make a clarinet barrel, and so I decided I would try, and rather than having to make the whole barrel, all of the parts, knowing there was a learning curve involved, right? So I made the two ends, the sockets, as screw pieces, so I wouldn't have to continually make those, and I could experiment with the bore itself. And it was not a big deal for me. Screw rim mouthpieces and backbores, and those are things that are common in the brass world, but it was not common in the woodwind world. And he flipped out over it. So we went through the patent process, and we created a company. And so voila, after spending a bunch of money and time, I had a patent on clarinet parts. So, but on the trumpet side, I never patented anything. Yeah. Looking back, I probably should have patented the oversleeve and maybe the S-shaped pipe, but a lot of people have copied them, but I still feel like I'm ahead of the pack with the pipes themselves and how they work.
Were you the first to do a reverse pipe?
Well, I don't think so. I think reverse pipes had been around for a long time. My oversleeve solution for brace placement, that was pretty innovative.
You think about all the different, well, Wayne mentioned some of the things about cryogenics, all the things that people can try. And I don't know if cryogenics is still a big thing, but even going from an ovate tuning slide to, curved, I guess is what you call it, the differences like that. I still look at that and think, how can such a little thing make such a big difference. And it was, we talked about this with Wayne, where he replaced, in my third valve slide, he replaced the guide with a different material.
Right, sure. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how does this work? And it's, well, thanks to people like you who are, constantly working on, let's try this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what happens when, and I think that's where these, these great instruments come out. And of course, you guys do it at such a high level too. And yeah, people are going to copy you, but that's what drives, such great competition out there. So, I'm associated with Shires now. And I've had students ask me, oh, you're going to try to sell me Shires. And I said, no. I said, I want you to go out and try as many different trumpets as you can. I said, there are so many great horns out there because the competition, right, has driven excellence. Everybody, if you're going to survive, you better put a good product out there.
Absolutely.
And I said, if you end up buying a Shires or an Eastman, that's great, but I want you to buy what you're going to sound the best on and can afford, But I still, I don't think Shires would get upset with me saying that. I think they probably feel the same way.
Well, it's, I remember reading an article, and maybe it was ITG years and years ago, talking about the history of Bach, musical instruments are very derivative, the way it's gone. And, the modern classical trumpets were very influenced by the old French, the pre-war French bassins and so on. And if I'm remembering correctly from this article, that Bach, really tried to hire, in fact, these two brothers that were known for making really wonderful copies of, French bassins. So you think about the names that were, well, I'm familiar with, maybe the youngest people, not so much, but so, Bach, of course, and then Colicchio and Donald Benge and those guys who were, if you look at those designs, they were very much related to those old French as a starting point. And then, people started to develop their own improvements or variations, and they all went on in a direction. But I would say, violin design, is clearly influenced by those old Italian instruments, right. So anyway, I think, is there anything new? I think sure, within the parameters of where we're at with trumpet designs and what people are looking for, and what the needs of the players are, with the type of music and the expectations that audiences have, that music directors have, that orchestras, that drives a choice. And and the choice is might be influenced to a certain degree, but it's it's that whole thing.
Well, everybody's got a market. Yamaha has their market. Andy Taylor has his market, and I bring him up because he creates some of the most visually stunning trumpets. I mean, he really gets creative with that, but that's not Yamaha's thing, right? And Jason Harrelson, these guys who are really creating. Right. I look at it as it's a visceral kind of experience, right? Sure. The visual, and at the same time, though, their horns still play great. But I couldn't imagine sitting down in an orchestra section with, a heart-shaped trumpet. The Taylor, it would be too much of a distraction. But and I owned a couple of Taylors for a while. In fact, that's what I sold to buy my Yamahas. So, but I appreciate the creativity and just the visual design of things.
They're gorgeous for sure.
Yeah. So, do you feel a pressure necessarily to, maybe either from yourself or from Yamaha, to like, okay, I got to come up with the next big thing, or is it just kind of the steady process of?
I think it's not. I think one of the things that distinguishes Yamaha from others, and not knowing exactly how others, deal with their process, is, and Wayne likely talked about listening, we're, not leading people down a path, and sort of forcing an end result, but listening to what people want and listening to their needs. And the need is what drives a project, right? And so the artist model trumpet, starting with the Chicago, there was a starting place. When I joined Yamaha in 2001 and, choosing a first project, and John Hagstrom and I were such good friends and great collaborators, and he wasn't a very far away from Grand Rapids in Chicago. It just made sense to try to, to do something together. And, the idea of creating a trumpet that would be a good choice to play in the Chicago Symphony, given the history of the instruments and all of that, was really monumental, and you would think maybe not even possible. But that's the path that we went down. And the trumpet that came out of that was really born out of, the back and forth conversation and the testing in the orchestra and, the improvements and getting it to a point where, it was acceptable to play in the orchestra, and then we produce it. But then as things continue on, and then we end up with the second generation and the third. Right. But that trumpet came out of not somebody kind of siloed, in a cubicle thinking of what is the great next thing. Right. Oh, this is it. It was an evolution of a conversation that was kind of focused around a goal.
So you've got artist models, the Bergeron, Vizzuti, Bobby Shew, Sullivan. Bob Sullivan have one?
Bob Sullivan was, Bob helped develop the first New York model.
Right. But the ones with their name attached, what does it take to put their name on an instrument?
Well, their name, actually the Z trumpet doesn't, people call it a Bobby Shew, and for good reason, but it was a 6310Z, 8310Z, and then 8310Z2. There are signature models, mostly I would say the signature models that are overtly a signature model are probably the ones in Japan with more Japanese players than anything. But the Bergeron model,
right.
So it's a matter of collaborating with these world-class players to create an instrument that would work really well for them. And then, if you create an instrument that's going to satisfy somebody like that, it's a great instrument and it will be successful.
Yeah.
As a regular production horn, Yamaha's not really gone in the direction of signature models per se. But those models that have been produced are clearly associated with those players. It's the third generation New York trumpets, David Bilger. That trumpet would not exist without him, and the variation of that, the YM bell, that would not exist without Tom Rolfe's, in that collaboration. And so they are a huge part of the story, even if it doesn't say David Bilger on it or Tom Rolfe's,
right.
Or Wayne Bergeron or Bobby Shew. There's no denying their role in their history.
I'll edit this out because everybody you've mentioned, I'm interviewing Wayne Bergeron next week, but I've already talked to Tom Rolfe's this morning. Okay. Dave Bilger a couple of weeks ago. Let's see. Oh my gosh, I can't think how many Vizzuti. Rex, Ryan, Joe Bergstaller yesterday. And it's like, so many great artists, play Yamaha. Sorry, that was just my little realization that, hey, I've talked to all these people. And the trumpet, I think Jens and Ryan both had one, the blue Cancer Blows. What a striking color, that. And that's obviously a limited production model, or is it
Yeah, that's not offered through Yamaha. You know, Jens have those too,
Okay.
especially just, you know, for the Cancer Blows project. And,
Right.
you know, it's a striking visual, you know, and then the engraving Cancer Blows on it, you know,
Hmm.
just to really, you know, point attention to Cancer Blows and what that's.
Right. Um, yeah, the Song of Hope World Band premiered today. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
I was in tears by the end of it. It's just, and to see, I forget how many thousands of people, or 1,400 or so people contributed to this, and it's overwhelming to watch that.
It's an unbelievable. You know, I heard about it early on, and it is monumental, and how you could, you know, wrap your hands or how just a technical part of how do you put that together
Yeah.
and something that's. I can't wait to see it myself. I'm glad to hear it is
Yeah.
such a big
Yeah.
success.
And the other nice thing is, of course, all the stars are there, but then you've got these clips of like a 6-year-old girl holding a trumpet playing, and it's like, and I don't know, it's just, but that's what it was all about. I think it was well done. Whoever put that together was terrific. But yeah, so Yamaha has been fortunate to be associated with some really terrific, not just players, but they're great people.
And I think you hit the nail right on the head. You know, that's the thing that is that I've enjoyed more than anything. These friendships and relationships, and they go back for a long way. You know, you look at Bobby, whose first connection with Yamaha happened in Japan. You know, when he was there, I think with Toshiko's band, and that was. I think it was probably in the 70s or early 80s, somewhere in that time frame. But yeah, I am so lucky to be able to call them friends, you know, and collaborators, you know, and Holken, you know, being another one who has been such an important part of my career as well.
Yeah.
You know,
I think he should develop a Charlie A model C trumpet,
aren't
because
those,
that's his project through this pandemic, is recording
those
all those.
yeah, those recordings are absolutely incredible. And you know, the pandemic has been horrible, of course.
Absolutely.
If there are good things that have come out of it, you could point to that as being one example, because you know, normally he is so busy. And he's got these concert dates and other things going on, that having the time, you know, to go through and record all of those, you know, I would say it's probably safe to say it probably wouldn't have happened. And now every week we get to, you know, experience a new one, and that's incredible. And there are others. You know, you think about all the other musicians. Great musicians at home that are doing the same kind of thing. Jim Walt has been doing regular, you know, broadcasts of pieces, and there are a whole host of others that are you know, as well.
Yeah.
That part has been amazing.
And thank goodness for technology to be able to share it this way, right?
Sure.
I mean, making music would probably still be going on, but you wouldn't be able to share it like like you are now.
Right. Yeah. I think it's you know, technology has, thank God that we have it so that we can stay connected and we can continue to create and do that kind of thing. But I think as people have gotten into it and become more comfortable with it, I would not doubt that we see some, you know, some new, you know, creations coming out of that probably wouldn't have been thought about, you know, before, so many people kind of being forced into learning how to do it and so on.
Yeah. Well, even new on the composition front, I've interviewed a couple of composers in the last little bit, and you know, this has steered their direction. Their creative path is focused on, well, and this is true. I mean, creativity is born of traumatic events. You know, it's like you say, you can't play or sing the blues until you've suffered. You know, and if we have to find a silver lining, it's that new things are going to pop up. And so, yeah, I mean, I wish this pandemic had never happened, but we've got to make the best that we can out of it.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, you just have to, that's life, right? You
Yeah.
don't know. And there are people that are really helping us get through it. People like Hogan, like Jim, Rob Parton. I don't know if you saw that video that he did a while back, uh, those kinds of things, are what kind of bring you joy and give you the energy to be able to help get through all of this stuff. And, music is so important from that aspect, and what we all do and the part that we play in that. Society needs it.
Yeah. So I know you're still working through this, working from home probably.
Yep.
What else are you doing to pass the time these days?
Well, since I'm not playing trumpet so much, kind of my performance outlet has been photography. And so that's been a passion of mine since I was pretty young. But I've gotten pretty deep into it especially the last 20 years.
Landscape, flowers, what's the...
It's whatever, I've done things from traditional photography, landscapes, I shot a still life. There was an old dried kind of squash it's been hanging on my fence. And I've seen it every time I get up. It's right outside the slider in the bedroom. And I've not taken it down because I thought, you know what, that's looking pretty good. I bet I could create it. So things like that, fun photo sessions of one of my friends' litter of Cuba cars, to, other kind of out there sorts of things with using multiple exposures and intentional camera movement. Trying to tell a story in a different way using photography.
Where can people find this?
Well, I share most of it on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
The time is coming close to where I should probably organize those in a better place, maybe a website or something. But it's been great. And working with great artists, I get a chance to photograph a lot of wonderful. One of the highlights of that aspect of it was being able to photograph the entire session of Tom Hooton's Williams recording session. And so I was fortunate to be able to go there and do that and get permission. I had complete access of the entire sound stage and got some great shots. And then Tom invited me to come with him and Jennifer, his wife, to meet John Williams and shoot the cover for that. So, so I did the cover for that.
Very cool.
Yeah. So that's that's been fun. And then I've got other little things that I fill in the gaps.
Yeah. But Eric Berlin, I don't know if he's a Yamaha guy, but he's into photography as well, and he posts some of these shots of the night sky where you can, how in the world do you capture that? Just beautiful. He's got a great eye for that sort of thing.
He does. And there are several of us that, kind of share things, and Eric is one. Michael Anderson is really deep into it, a wonderful photographer. And kind of really getting into it is David Bilger. David is spending some time trying to figure it out too.
Yeah, I remember him mentioning that now in his interview. Yeah. So, well, this has been great.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed getting to know more about you, and this is not a gear show. We very rarely talk about that sort of, but I mean, it's necessary because this is what you do. But it's I'm fascinated by what you and Wayne have been able to do, and in Yamaha, it's a great company, great product, and great people.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, that's why we've stayed, and that's why I think we've really grown ourselves. Is that the support that we've had, and the way Yamaha as a company, they're their goals and passions have lined up with us personally, and that's been a great fit. It's been great talking to you, and it's wonderful to get a break in the day to actually have a conversation. Yeah.
Good. Well, I hope we get a chance to meet in person sometime soon. And in the meantime, please stay healthy. All right. Take care. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.